So the first gen Audi R8 V8 4.2 liter manual. This is a car that I had driven once before, and going into that video, I didn't really have that high of an expectation for the car, to be honest. Compared to a contemporary Ferrari or McLaren or Lamborghini, this car is definitely down on power, up on weight, and it's definitely more of a comfort-focused sports car. So this particular model is a 2012 R8 V8, and it's owned by my good friend Zygrene. He's actually been on the channel several times before with a host of different enthusiast cars, but this one is his latest in a line of vastly different cars. He actually sold his 96 Brooklyn's Green Acura NSX to kind of make room for this R8. And while I can't say I fully approve of that decision, I think this car is still, on paper, very, very worthy as being a replacement to that original NSX. Gotta love an over 8,000 RPM, naturally aspirated V8. It is definitely the highlight of this car. 430 horsepower and a little over 300 foot-pounds of torque means this car really needs to be revved out to get every last bit of performance. Good braking, although you definitely do feel the car's weight, all 3,600 plus pounds in the corners. But it's kind of offset by the fact that this quattro all-wheel drive system just gives you so much traction exiting corners. Zygrene actually said that he does daily drive this thing with no problem. I think the only downside is that the front trunk is pretty small. It's quite a bit smaller than a Cayman trunk, but you do have some space behind the back seats here, so that makes up for a bit of that. Man, the joy of this car is the engine and this amazing gated manual shifter. Every shift you have to be deliberate. It's a medium-high effort shifter, I would say. Because you can see the gates, it's all exposed, it's virtually impossible to miss a shift in this thing. Steering feel is good considering this is a 3,600 pound car, but I do wish that there was a little bit more weight when the steering's loaded up. It is quite light in the corners. I'm also quite a big fan of just the overall ergonomics of the interior. It's well designed, everything is high quality, all the touch points are, you know, soft touch plastic, or you got carbon fiber trim in this particular model, or leather Alcantara on the seats. It's a really nice place to be, especially considering it's an 8-year-old car, but this design is actually 12 years old. God, that engine sounds so good. Very easy to heel-toe downshift. Amazing throttle response. Oh, the click-clack sound of that shifter. Downshifting from third to second is just such a joy in this thing. Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. The perfect match for this car. Hey, this car is holding its own on the downhill despite its 3,600 pound frame. Oh my God, this is so good. There we go. Wow, 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 wow. Out of the 3 cars we're driving today, I always expected this one would be the most mild and kind of maybe disappointing in a way when pushed hard. But I have to say, driving this car first really sets the bar very, very high for the other 2. Yeah, the Audi R8 V8 manual is just a fantastic car. I think out of all the R8s, even if money was no option, I think I would still opt for one of these, a first-gen V8 with the gated shifter. And let's not forget the looks. I mean, I think a lot of my friends said that out of the 3 cars here today, this is the most like kind of lame looking one, or kind of watered down. But I think there's a really nice understated elegance to this design. It's really truly timeless, and I think compared to the new R8, this looks 10 times better. I think the new one's trying too hard, it's too angular, the headlights are just too aggressive looking. I think this car is more curvy and it gives you more of that timeless GT look. Traction's so good out of corners. You can feel the rear just hunker down while the front continues to bite. The NSX and the GT4 are going to have a hard time making me smile harder than this thing has. 3 mid-engine beauties, plus my lowly little 987 Cayman over there. What car to hop in next? I think I will try the GT4. The NSX is so heavily modified, whereas the GT4 is much closer to stock. I think it'll be a nice progression from mild up to hardcore. So we're back here with a familiar face, my good friend Dave. He's been on the channel many times. And as you can see, he's also stepped into yet another car. He's got the GT4 now. He still has the Supercharged Nsx. Sold the Civic Type R, surprisingly, after like 40 some track days with it. But this is his next sort of turnkey, streetable track car. I'm so excited to be driving one of these again. The one I drove, Alan's blue car, a few years back, completely blew my mind. It was one of the best cars I've ever driven, hands down. All right, so we've got sport mode on.
Yep.
We'll turn the loud exhaust mode on.
We'll leave the suspension in soft.
Yeah, good call. All right, let's do this.
The confidence in this car.
So much suspension compliance. I praise the R8 very heavily, but man, this suspension's definitely harsher, but it gives you so much control.
It responds so fast, it's like telepathic.
Seriously.
What do you think?
Here's the thing. I'm going to just compare it purely to the R8 for a moment.
Okay.
Chassis is on a completely different level. It's not even close. You feel everything. I mean everything through the steering, even though this is an electric rack. This is the best electric rack I've ever used, hands down. It weights up nicely in the corners, but it's not overly heavy or overly boosted. It just feels like a hydraulic rack, more or less. This car is around 600 pounds lighter, if not even more, than the R8. So you feel that weight in the corners going into the braking zones. The one place where I think the R8 has this beat is the engine. It's a base 991 Carrera S 3.8 liter, which is by all standards still a very good engine. But the R8, it just gives you a different sense of occasion when you fire it up. That V8 that revs out to 8,300, it's more dramatic. I wouldn't say it's any faster than this, but it stirs the soul a little bit better.
That turn in.
So immediate.
Remember I told you it felt like a S2000 on steroids?
Oh man, definitely on steroids. This second gear is too long though. I don't get to wind it out much here.
This road's not for this.
True, it's meant for a racetrack.
It does really well though.
It does. You just leave it in second gear. Don't bother shifting into third.
No.
Wow, those brakes. The harder you step on it, the faster the car stops.
All my friends make fun of my giggle, but every time I hit those brakes, they make me giggle.
Look at that.
You guys didn't know, Fenton and I love brakes.
We love brakes. It's probably the least sexy thing possible on a car, but my favorite. This car is totally unfazed by bumps. Suspension just soaks it up instantly. Conclusion, compared to the R8, this thing is so much more focused. It's like a night and day difference. That being said, I still really like the R8 on a road like this because you're just kind of driving around 6-7 tenths, having a good time. Gated shifter's amazing in the R8. The engine sounds amazing. This thing though really rewards the driver more because, like I said, everything's a direct one-to-one input. steering, shifter, brakes, throttle response. If I had, I'm gonna bring it up. I know you guys are gonna shit on me for this, but it feels like an upscale mid-engine S2000 with an extra 150 horsepower.
Both of us know the S2000 platform very well.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
All right, well, there's only one thing left to do, and it's right in front of me.
Yeah.
The freaking Supercharged NSX, the beast. Probably the least powerful car here, and yet it might just be the most exciting, but we'll have to find out.
That's the one car I was scared of.
In the comparison?
Yeah. Johnny's build is pretty nice.
Pretty damn nice. All right, boys and girls, playtime is over. We are in a 1994 Acura NSX, owned by my good friend Johnny. This car was featured in my JDM Legends video from a few years back, and he's made quite a few changes to the car since then. Obviously, it's still wide body. It's still got the crazy wing, the crazy front splitter. The original engine blew, so we had it rebuilt, and Busy at Busy Moto down in SoCal retuned the car. So now it should be making right around 330 wheel horsepower, which is nothing crazy and definitely lower than any of the other cars here. But the car is tuned for reliability and drivability. One of the big changes he made, he swapped out the original USDM gear set with the JDM close ratio 5-speed. So now we have a much tighter second gear. And right away, compared to the R8 and the GT4, this is such a more visceral, raw driving experience. The car is set up for the track. There's no other way to put it. This car is not meant for daily driving, although it is streetable. It's not overly harsh, I would say, but it's not something I would want to take to the grocery store by any means. That's why I saved this car for last. It is the most hardcore out of the three cars we have here today. Wow, this thing is physical to drive. I know I said the GT4 steering gives a great amount of information, but this is on another level. Unassisted manual steering with a very slow ratio lock to lock. My arms are all over the place. With the Supercharger, you get a really linear torque curve. It pulls across the rev range, but it's still, this engine still thrives above 5,000 RPMs. It pulls all the way to 8,000. The amount of steering angle I have to input to get through these corners is just comical compared to the other cars. The only word I can use to describe this car accurately is hardcore. It's stiff, it's loud, it's fairly unforgiving, at least compared to the R8 and the GT4. Out of the three cars, this has the best visibility by far. Back in the early 90s, when crash regulations weren't as strict, you got these very thin A-pillars, one of the best shifters in the world even today. The GT4 shifter and the R8 shifter are, you know, cream of the crop by all standards. But this old NSX shifter still holds its own. Really good stopping power from the stock tech ST40 brakes. The Supercharger does reduce the throttle response compared to NA a bit, but overall, it's still quite responsive. It's not quite at the same level as the R8 or GT4, however. So compared to the other two cars we have here today, this car is by far the most hardcore and by far the least suited to a tight, bumpy canyon road like this one. I think the R8, although it's by far the most comfortable, luxurious, GT-focused car of the group, it's also, in my opinion, the most laid back to drive. It gives you a lot of confidence. It lets you enjoy the engine, the gearbox, and everything to the fullest, even though it's not a very focused driver's machine as much as these other two. The GT4, on the other hand, gives you full confidence to push the car harder and harder. The car is meant for the track, so that's where you can really push it to 10/10ths and explore its real potential. The NSX, on the other hand, is a bit of a conundrum for me because the car is so fun to drive. It looks like $1 million and it's got the heritage, but when it really comes to a holistic driving experience, I think the amount of time, money, and effort you have to put into one of these cars, like Jami has done with this one, to bring it up to such a high level, you could literally just go out and buy a GT4 for probably less money. And that gives you a more cohesive package. That being said, the NSX still speaks to me the most because it has the heritage, it has the legacy of Ayrton Senna's involvement in the development of this car in the early 90s. All three of these cars are a pretty uncommon sight on the road, but I think easily the NSX has the most presence when it comes to hardcore car enthusiasts. I mean, this car is a dude magnet. I mean, any NSX owner will tell you the moment you got to fill up your car with gas at the station, you'll have like 6-7 dudes come up to you and be like, hey, is that an NSX? Can I take a picture? The R8, probably the least of the bunch because let's be honest, it's seen as kind of a rich man's toy, but quite honestly, you cannot go wrong with any of these cars. They are just some of the best driving machines out there. If I had to pick one of the three to take home, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would not choose the NSX. I would choose the GT4. Even though you really don't have to do anything with it to make it track ready. I mean, it's pretty much capable out of the box. And in that respect, it's the least work out of all these three cars to make into a track car. But even out here on the street, it's the most fun to drive. And for that reason, I would take that car home. Let the flame wars begin.